Okay, so need to let me know if you're not hearing sound. Got a letter here from Catherine who said that she's finding the chats valuable. I'm tickled. She said yesterday she had asked someone to write a letter of recommendation, and they refused, and she was shocked. She said before she knew it, she was trying to change that person's mind, and clinging in a way she would not previously have recognized. She said her coach reminded her that if she was full of real love, it wouldn't matter if the other person wrote the letter. And she says here, I was asking too much or expecting too much from one person. Today I feel so much better about everything. I told the truth about myself the best of my ability. In the past, I would be very sad about this. Now I'm just letting go, accepting the rejection and going forward. No poor me. Good for you. Nice to see, huh? Because when we're empty, we feel usually not just a little empty, but desperately empty, and then we feel justified in demanding from the people around us whatever we ask for, because after all, we're in pain, right? And if we hurt, we have the right to ask anybody around us to decrease our pain, as though somehow everybody has the obligation now to help us just because we hurt, which of course isn't true, but it feels like it to us. And now you're seeing that feeling empty, you were just clinging to that person, which is really a nice example of clinging, by the way. And just simply seeing it changes the picture. Just realizing what we're doing gives us the ability to make different choices. So, nice description. We just did a seminar in Washington, D.C. that went very nicely. There were quite a few therapists there, psychologists and psychiatrists and such. And welcome to those of you who are here as members of the website who have come from that seminar. It was a nice experience to see, again, that many people come to an awareness of a different way of living. People who haven't experienced real love their whole lives, this is different. The lady who, the editor of Ladies Home Journal, who's writing the article that will soon come out in Ladies Home Journal on real love, has had a real hard time understanding this. When people have only known conditional love all their lives, and then you describe people's lives changing as a result of unconditional love, she just couldn't wrap her head around this. It was just very confusing to her. So it's understandable that for a while it's difficult for people to latch onto these principles. But if we persist in them and actually feel the power of them enough times in a row, it makes an awful big difference. During the D.C. conference, for example, one couple that we worked with came up in front of everybody and illustrated a problem that they were having between them. She was angry at him because he wasn't doing their taxes and had been putting them off for, I guess, years. And she felt, of course, completely justified in attacking him because, after all, the taxes have to be done. Well, it became apparent within 60 seconds why he doesn't do the taxes. Every word that he uttered, she corrected. He would speak, she'd jump in and step on his head. He'd say 5, she'd say, no, 4. He'd say something and she would jump in and criticize him. Well, after a while, I said to her, can you see why he would avoid doing anything where he could be criticized? In her presence, he wouldn't even want to speak. In fact, one of her criticisms was that he wouldn't even order food at a restaurant. And I said, how would anybody dare do anything around you? Can you imagine this man saying, well, I think I'll have the whatever. And she said, no, you don't want that. Oh, that'll be no good. It gives you gas. She would find something wrong with everything this man did. So what do you think his solution was? To do nothing. And after a while, he even said, I'm a runner. Duh. She attacks him constantly. So only natural that he would run. And it doesn't make either one of them the villain. Whatever protecting behavior we choose, we end up alone and miserable. But it helped them a lot to see what they were doing. Because once you see what you're doing, you can begin to do it differently. Just like Catherine here at the beginning of our chat said, once she realized that she was clinging, she could make a different choice. Whereas when we don't know that we're clinging, we will keep doing it. And we'll find excuses for it. We'll say, well, no, I'm not. And what I'm doing is right. It's justified. So once this woman saw what she was doing with her husband, she found herself mute. She couldn't speak. Every word out of her mouth was a criticism. Became kind of funny, really. Funny and sad at the same time. She got to where she couldn't open her mouth because every word that came out was an attack. So it's very helpful for us to be around people who can at least point out to us what we're doing. Creates a whole new world for us, new opportunities. Here's a new person who's new to the chat room who says, I'm very new, just registered for the event this weekend in Dallas, and I found this in the benefits and wanted to see what this is about. Not sure if I'll have any questions tonight, but yeah, it's the more that you show up here, the more you'll discover that you can ask live questions about what's going on in your life, about real love principles, or you can bring people to your house and they can ask questions. For example, here's somebody who says, this is Martha and I'm with Catherine. So it's really common that for each person who's listed here in the participants in the chat room, there are often 2 or 3 people there who are watching the chat session. In some cases, there's an entire group. There's one group in Arizona that routinely tunes in where there are 20 plus men who are watching. This is Martha, I'm with Catherine. How do I feel less empty when I have so much to do at work? Okay. I've been such a performer in the past, and I've been letting that image of myself go, but I so want to continue doing that. It usually kept me uptight and feeling empty. I can stand outside of myself now and stop, but I still want to perform. So I'm hoping I'm getting your question right. You're saying, even though you have a whole lot to do, how do you overcome the feeling of emptiness? It may help you to remember that even when in your life you've accomplished everything that you had to do, even when you've done everything you were supposed to do at work, even when you were doing all the right things, did you ever feel genuinely happy, peaceful, loved, loving, genuine happiness inside? No. We do everything we're supposed to at work, and all we get now is more things to do at work. So, sure, there are lots of things piled up at work, but remember that, so what? If you did them all, you still wouldn't be happy. So you do the best you can, and remember that real happiness doesn't come from doing those things. At the peak of my life, when I was doing the most things, I was never the happiest. Let me know if that doesn't answer your question. Here's Nikki who says, I've recently felt the need to begin a real love conversation with my son, and here's what I wrote to him. Where do you think I should go from here? Dear son, I just wanted to thank you again for inviting Dad and me to dinner last night to congratulate you on your promotion. So I'm assuming that the son is older than 12. You know your value does not depend on climbing the corporate ladder. If anything did not work out, I would be disappointed for you. Oh, if it was what you wanted, but not disappointed in you. My hope is for you to be happy in what you do, to live a life you can look back over in satisfaction that your gifts have been lived out and shared with others. It's all about finding your center and staying true to it. I think sometimes we as parents do not always send that message clearly, especially as our firstborn son. The message is often, we love you more if and when and because. So I just wanted to say that we celebrate your success and we celebrate you even more. Mr. Rogers really did have it right. I like you just the way you are, just because you're you. I hope it's never too late to do a better job of giving you that message. Love, Mom. Let's see. Okay, so you've already sent it to him. Be careful in sending a message like this. Now, you've already sent it. Nothing bad about the message, please. But notice in the message here you said, you know your value does not depend on climbing the corporate ladder. Just be careful because you're getting perilously close to delivering him a lecture. And he may not take it that way, but it says here, I think you said, let's see, you just went to a dinner to congratulate him on his promotion. So be careful while he's enjoying his promotion not to diminish it in any way. So while people are enjoying any form of imitation love, to diminish it or demean it or to criticize it usually doesn't help them. The way for them to see the power of real love is to love them unconditionally. And so, for example, if you really want to highlight the value of real love, point out how the achievement of some success in your life was empty, rather than to use an example from his. Make sense? Just so he doesn't feel criticized at all. People hate to have anything they've done well pointed out as being less than they thought it was. That's all. So just keep loving him. If he makes a mistake, that's the time to go, doesn't matter, but don't diminish his successes. What does the performer use in getting and protecting behaviors? Power and praise, sure. I mean, as I perform, I get a lot of things. If I perform well at work, for example, as I move up in the corporate ladder, I get increased influence, which is power. If I perform consistently well and people say, oh, boy, isn't he competent, I get praise. And the more praise I get, the more influence I get, which is more power. Also, the more competently I perform, the less susceptible I am to criticism, which means the more safety I get. So by performing well, wow, we get a lot. You know, praise, power, and safety. That's quite a bit. What should I do instead to feel less empty while I'm at work? It's a world we all have to go into every day. I do have many people at work that do love me. How do I get a break to get real love? What if I'm in a meeting and can't call? It can be enough simply to give real love to somebody at work. In other words, to simply reach out and be concerned about someone else. To simply, as you're passing the hall, gosh, you know somebody whose child is applying to college at Rutgers, and you say, how's that college application going? That's a moment of unconditional love. You didn't have to ask that question. You're showing a genuine concern for them. Or you happen to know that somebody's having a real difficulty dealing with a particular IT issue, and you say, so did you manage to get over that hump in getting those pieces of information together? Is there something I can do to help you in contacting whoever it is at this other department or group or company? Those are loving acts that are just as effective at work as anywhere else. If you're interested, send me an email, and I'll send you a copy of the book that I just finished days ago called Real Love in the Workplace, that will show you lots of ways that you can both find and give and swim in unconditional love while you're at work. So that book's filled with examples. Feel free to email me and just tell me and remind me that I talked about that here in the group. Nikki was saying that it can be so tricky, this business of criticizing people. It really can. But just remember this. Anytime you say something to somebody, are you ever criticizing what they're doing without their asking for your opinion? Then probably you don't want to. Like with an adult son, you want to love them and support them and love them. And if you ever want to teach them something, you always teach them using examples from your life. So again, don't feel bad from the example that you gave me. I'm not criticizing what you did with your son. Just remember that people hear better examples that we use where we say, oh, boy, wasn't that stupid of me? People listen to that, especially our children, no matter what age they are. You say, oh, well, wasn't that dumb when I did that? Whereas, even if it's just subtle and offhand, when you say, now, to a child, now be careful when they hear a criticism of them. They tend to. Here's somebody who says, my son has always performed well, and so he rarely gives me a chance to show my love is not tied to performance. Okay, so what you can do is, if he's performing well all the time, you can show him where love and happiness is tied to things other than performance. You can, for example, with your own son, talk about examples where you criticized him as a child for not succeeding. Or you can talk about how, do you remember how I used to praise you for succeeding at school, but I didn't praise you for being kind? Or you could talk about how, do you remember when you failed at whatever? You didn't do well on a test. And I would go, you can give them hundreds of examples of where you were not an unconditionally loving parent. You think he's not going to get the point? He'll get the point, and kids love to hear about our mistakes. Somebody asked about how you get the workplace book, and I think Jonathan just typed it in. If you don't see that up there, please let me know. JRO asked if I talked about listening yet. No, I was waiting for you. Let's see here. He said, this is an email from him. He was saying, I find myself slipping back into old habits when it comes to listening. I have a difficult time letting the other person finish. I hear something in a story that jogs a memory or adds to the topic at hand, and I just can't wait to get it out. That's so common. So I interrupt the other person speaking. And in some of these cases, I can tell you that I actually think I am beginning to be loving by providing the input. Other times it can be a story that I've heard before. I'm just not that interested, so I look around to find other things to observe or think about. In other words, pretty selfish. Yeah, but look how cool that you just did what you did. Most people spend their entire lives selfishly focusing on their part of the conversation, never listening to the other person, and never noticing it. You see what you're doing. And the fact that you see it is a miracle. So if you see it, you will, over time, change it. You will. So just seeing it alone is enough. And if you see it consistently, bit by bit, you will quit it. Not all at once, but you will. So this is huge. The admission of our being stupid is the first step on the way to joy. So what you're doing is wonderful. Then you said this person can also be a big victim. So apparently you're talking to an older person about his son who still lives with him. Oddly enough, when he talks about his son, I don't say anything. Then I wait till he's finished and I add a statement like, well, gee, that's unfortunate. Now, interesting, isn't it? That a lot of the time when he's speaking, you jump in and you have something to say. When he says something about being a victim with his son, you don't have something to say, which means what? You don't know what to say. So it would help to talk about some of the things you could say. You said the principles of real love have opened my eyes to the victim trap. If you offer sympathy or advice to the victim, you just add fuel. I also sometimes talk about real love to him, but I quickly change the topic when I know he can't really hear it. And then you said when you don't act like a victim enough with him and give him sympathy, he plays the role himself. Gives himself his own sympathy and irritation. So you might try something with him, because continuing to listen to a victim whine helps who? Nobody. They don't become happier. You don't learn anything from the experience. Nobody wins. Why ever have a conversation where nobody wins? Unless it's, with a child or a member of the family where, you're pretty much in an ongoing relationship with them for the rest of your life. But why spend your time in a conversation that's wasted? So you might say something like, when he talks about his son, well, my son does, because I'm sure he does that. My son is irresponsible. My son is ungrateful. You might say, have you ever wondered why he behaves like that? Look how simple that is. Have you ever wondered why he behaves like that? And if the man just goes right on and ignores you, you bring it up again. Have you ever... People can't ignore you asking that question forever. After a while, if they ignore you saying it forever, you just as well walk away. They can have a conversation with their door. So, you ever wondered why he acts like that? Well, I guess. I don't know. Why does he? Eventually, they've got to ask you. And you say, my experience is that people act like that only when they don't feel loved. If you interject with opportunities for people to hear about real love, and you don't say it about him, you don't say because you're an unloving pig, that isn't going to work, but you say people act like that because they don't feel loved. And if somebody's acting like a victim, eventually they're either going to listen to you talk about real love, in which case they win and you win, or they're going to quit talking to you. They're going to find somebody that it's easier to be a victim with, in which case they're left unchanged and you win, because you don't continue to spend your time listening to somebody who's determined to be a victim. You have, in other words, nothing to lose by at least insisting on interjecting with opportunities to talk about real love. Now, you're not forcing them to talk about real love. I don't make anybody ever talk about it. Not my business. But if somebody is going to come to me and whine about being a victim, look what happened to me. They chose me to talk to. I now then have a right to at least respond. Now, that doesn't give me a right to change them, criticize them, make them listen. No. But they didn't choose a bottle of water to talk to. They chose me. If they wanted to talk to something that didn't respond, I'd just as well leave the room and they can talk to the bottle of water. But they chose me. So I get to choose how I respond. And at some point, if they're going to act like a victim, I get to say, would you like to learn why that person acts like that? And again, I don't get to force them to listen. But I do get to bring up the opportunities for them to listen. Up to them what they do with them. But I'm the fool if I sit there and continue to waste my time doing absolutely nothing. Make sense? So you'll notice that as I talked about the Real Love in the Workplace book, as I talked about responding to this man's friend who acts like a victim, we have huge opportunities to extend to people real love, opportunities to learn about real love. We have opportunities to spread that all the time. Everywhere we go, people are dying from a lack of real love. So we have opportunities pretty much everywhere we go to at least create an opportunity for difference. Whether we make a difference, that's up to them. We don't get to change people. But they're everywhere, in the workplace, in casual conversations with friends, as we talk to family members, and all we do is create opportunities. Don't ever feel like you make anybody do anything. Here's somebody who says, would it be a really bad move to give the Real Love and Dating book to my son's girlfriend? She and I are developing a pretty good relationship. It depends. If you see that somebody needs to learn the real love principles and you simply give somebody a Real Love and Dating book, yeah, that's kind of an intrusive move. I would not do that. But, like you just said, she and I are developing a pretty good relationship. So, as you talk, surely you're talking about something more than the price of Campbell's soup. So you must be talking about, stuff, people's behavior. And so at some point, it'd be so easy for you to say, as she's saying, gosh, when I'm dating, I blank. Or when other people date, they blank. It's so easy for you to say, well, have you ever wondered why they do that? And when she says, well, yeah, I have. You say, I have this cool little collection of principles that has really helped me understand why people behave like they do. And this particular one applies to dating. Would you be interested in reading it? I have found it useful. Then, if she says yes, boom, you give her the book. Now it's a gift versus an intrusion. See the difference? Huge. With the simple asking of a question, you create opportunities rather than hitting people with sticks. This is Martha again. We're having an award assembly at school. I'm having some unloving thoughts about several teachers who voted down some rewards. Something. 8th graders. Oh, probably about, I don't know. Anyway, they think we're giving too much to them by having the ceremony, reception, and the dance afterward. This isn't their money, and it has to be spent on the students. I avoided the drama conversations. I ended up using other monies, but they purposely don't want to give. I've really been good about holding back my real thoughts. I'm also finding that I'm taking some of this personally at times. I've behaved well so far, but I don't know why I want to stay hurt. I feel hurt, for the students, I think. It's hard to watch other people be openly unloving, even vengeful, vindictive, angry, hateful toward other people, especially kids. And we want to reach in and choke them and say, don't you see what you're doing? Remember that these people, these teachers, who are behaving in an unloving way have matured probably none beyond the level of these kids that they're hurting. So you need to see them as kids. If you were to, in the slightest way, be recriminating, criticizing, angry toward them, they'd react with all the protecting behaviors you can imagine. And so what you might say is, these are kids that come from homes where they get very little recognition, acceptance, acknowledgement. And so you might turn to one of these people who doesn't want to do anything and say, I have some ideas, but gosh, I don't know anything. What do you think would be something that we could do to recognize these kids so that they feel better about themselves? That's a way that you can address feelings in this person that were never addressed for them as a kid. Those people didn't, those angry teachers didn't get recognized and acknowledged either. And then you need to accept that they still may not want to do anything. You can't take people beyond where they are. You can't teach a pig to sing. So whether you have the awards ceremony or not, which involves a lot of kids, you individually can still do all that's within your power to individually acknowledge and love them. That's all you got. That's all really any of us can do. I could spend the rest of my life resenting other people not being more loving toward folks, but what a waste of time. Or I could simply be as loving as I can be toward the people who are right around me. That's pretty much all I've got, So focus on that. Because the instant that I become resentful toward you for not being loving toward a third person, I can't be loving toward that third person either. See that? When I become resentful toward anyone, my ability to love everybody else becomes severely impaired. So we have to really be careful to avoid resenting anybody for anything. If somebody's unloving, it's because they don't know how to be, because they're incapable of being. And resenting them for being unloving is much like in the metaphor that we've used many times, resenting somebody for drowning. It's all they got. The Pleasanton group said, or has asked, how can I realize that I'm a victim and be able to stop it? This is easy. Do you feel angry? Do you feel disappointed, irritated, angry, frustrated? Any of those words that we use, annoyed. If you feel annoyed, you're feeling victimized. Because the instant I feel annoyed at somebody, I feel annoyed because they didn't do something for me. They didn't do something, or because they did do something to me, and that's the stance of the victim. Look what you did to me. Look what you should have done for me. You see, it's all about me. Victimhood might be the most destructive disease on the planet, right up there with fear and anger. So pretty easy to recognize victimhood. When you look at other people and think, well, you should have, so should have, why didn't you? All of those are cries of victims. And if you really want to learn about victimhood, go on the website and you'll find the book, which is in a download form. Pretty sure it's a download or a CD. I think it's a download, called Real Love and Freedom for the Soul, Eliminating the Chains of Victimhood. And the entire book is about victimhood. Very useful, and I highly recommend it. I've had some therapists write and say that the victim book has helped them more in therapy than any other book they've read. So, pretty useful. You'll find that if you're feeling irritated, frustrated, annoyed, offended, you're being a victim. If you feel offended, you're a victim. If you're feeling hurt, a victim. Angry, a victim. See how common it is? So a lot of us think, well, I'm not a victim. The instant you have that attitude, you're feeling like a victim. The instant we feel accused, holy smokes, victimhood is everywhere. And as you read that book, if you don't see yourself every 3 or 4 pages, then in addition to being a victim, you're a liar. It's that common. And we all do it. We do it all the time. We act like victims. Here's somebody who says, today I was at Chick-fil-A and I was sitting in the play area with my son. There was another man there with 2 children running around having fun being kids. He told them in a very loud voice to one child who was taking off his socks, I told you to keep your socks on. Oh, I've heard these before. One child then repeated the statement. The adult then said, you do not repeat what adults say, you are to listen. The event reminded me of my brother-in-law yelling at my son, telling him, children are to listen to adults. You need to listen to adults. In the past, I would have looked at some of this controlling speech as correct. Thank you for allowing me to be able to hear these. I do not love you when you do not do what I want. The controlling and power over children is so common, it is scary. In our society, controlling children is almost universal, completely accepted. Almost everyone does it. And the justifications we have for it are innumerable, aren't they? I'm doing it for their good. No, that's almost always a lie. We're doing it for our convenience. Telling a child, for example, who's in a play area, keep your socks on. Well, why? What do you care? I mean, if the kid takes his socks off, what's going to happen? If you're really well, he might lose his socks. Okay, then tell him when he takes his socks off, bring them to you. Or put them in his shoes. Or whatever. Let him play. Now here's the cool thing. The more things you let a child do, the happier they become, and the easier it is to restrict them from doing some other things. It's amazing. I used to run a varsity scout troop. It's a group of older boys, 14 and 15-year-olds. It's the group that Boy Scout leaders hate. They're the group that cause the most trouble because they're the most hormone poisoned and difficult and so on. And we had a huge group of boys, 25 to 30 boys every week. There were so many that we used to carry them around in a full-size school bus. And wherever they went, the rules that we imposed on them there were only 3. The rules were, you can't hurt anybody else's property, you can't hurt anybody else's feelings, and when I'm talking, you're not. That's it. So we discovered that with those simple rules about, and look what they're really about. They're about being loving and considerate. Don't hurt other people's things. Don't hurt other people's feelings, both about being loving. And the third one, when I'm talking you're not, is just so that an adult can come in and teach them. So it's all about loving and teaching. And I imposed the last rule rarely. So these kids learned that they could behave as kids. So we would go someplace like to a park or whatever, and they looked like absolute crazy children. They'd be climbing trees and screaming and swimming naked in the lake, and other adults would come over and say, who are those insane children? Who do they belong to? And many times I would say they don't belong to anyone. Or they'd say, who is in charge of them? And I would say, I have no idea. Because that's not how I viewed my role. Nobody's in charge of them. It's my job to love and teach them. And sometimes I would have adults come and say, are you with them? Mm-hmm. Yes. And they'd say, well, they need to get there, they need to behave. And I would say, so what are they doing wrong? Well, they're making a lot of noise and they're out of control. Really? Out of whose control? Yours? Well, yes, that's what they meant. They were out of the adults can't stand it when a child is not controllable. So I would say to them, here are the 3 rules we live by. If they break those, you let me know, but I doubt that will happen. And it never did. We just didn't have trouble with those kids. And if I ever went anywhere and said, okay, listen up, and I never had to say it louder than that, 30 running, screaming, rambunctious adolescent boys became instantly quiet. We used to travel all over the country in this school bus. And you can imagine what it's like to gather 30 boys to go anywhere at the same time, to be punctual. In all the times that we went anywhere, guess how many times the boys were late? Out of 30 boys, and hundreds of times we went anywhere. Never. When people feel trusted and loved, and you simply teach them and love them, they'll follow you anywhere. No kidding. So it's a cool thing that you're realizing here with your son, that this father obviously didn't realize. Telling children, you must do it because I tell you. If I do that with you, if I grab you by the collar and I say, you're going to listen to me, what's your natural immediate response? To resist me. And that's the natural immediate response of our children too. Whereas if we love them, they kind of just want to do the right thing. Amazing, isn't it? I was in a restaurant one day and there was this kid who was eating who knows what. But he was right behind us, and in the space of 15 minutes, maybe, I'm sure that this kid's mother corrected him 30 to 40 times in 15 minutes. you're eating too fast. By the end of the meal, you're eating too slow. Don't eat it like that. Eat it with your fork. Don't do that. You put too much on it. Don't. I don't know how the kid ever got anything in his mouth. No matter what he did, it was wrong. It made the meal absolutely unbearable for the kid. Made it almost unbearable for me. It was terrible. And we do this kind of stuff to our kids all the time. Without meaning to, we cripple them. So, good observation on your part. Love them, teach them. Which, by the way, also applies to what we do with adults. At work. As leaders, our job is to love them and teach them, and not to control them. Continuing with the Chick-fil-A saga. At Chick-fil-A, I used a consequence with my 3-year-old son. He was jumping in the seat, and I asked him to stop because the chairs for sitting and other people are sitting in the same bench. Then I stopped and told him, you can keep jumping if you want to, but as a consequence for jumping and not sitting at the table, you don't get an ice cream cone. I told him I really wanted him to have an ice cream cone. He chose to jump, and I didn't give him the ice cream. It was hard not to give him the treat because I know he loves ice cream. Was this the correct application of a consequence? Sure, why not? As long as there's no irritation, which it sounds like you weren't irritated. Controlling a child for stupid reasons only annoys the child. So this wasn't like you were telling the child, don't jump because you annoy me, personally, because you're breaking some absurd adult rule. No, when you're eating and somebody's jumping up and down, it's hard to eat. So you say to the child, now another possible consequence would have been, if he was jumping up and down, it would be really easy to say, I'm really glad you're having a good time. If a kid's jumping up and down, he's having fun. So you say, instead of stopping him, you could say, I'm glad you're having a good time jumping up and down. Why don't you go over there and jump up and down for a little while longer, and then you can come back here and finish your meal. I can't eat while you're jumping up and down. Nobody who's sitting at the dinner table jumps up and down. It's a sitting place. That's why they call them seats. And we jump up and down on floors. And see, if you tell it to them like that, smiling, they go, I got it. See? That's what we used to do with the Scouts. It's what we did with our kids. It's usually pretty obvious. And you make it obvious in a practical way. So like, for example, if you're in the living room watching television, and like I was telling you how my Scouts used to scream, if you're in the living room watching television and a kid screams, you say, oh, you're welcome to scream, but when you're screaming where we're watching television, we can't hear. So you have lots of choices. You can stop screaming, because we're all in here watching television. You can scream in the next room, because you don't have to stop screaming. Scream all you want, but can't do it in here because we're listening. You can continue to scream, but we'll put a motorcycle helmet over you with the visor down so that we can still hear. You can continue to scream, but we'll stick your head in the toilet where it won't be nearly as loud. I mean, when you tell them just like that, they begin to get the point. They see, oh, I see. So it's not controlling me that I can't scream. I can scream. I just can't scream where it affects other people. You see? I was talking to a lady just today, and her adult son is not all normal. He has some developmental problems. He's like 18. And she's helping him, and he's getting happier. But in the meantime, he does some things that are not entirely acceptable. So he will scream at her and use the most foul language. Essentially rap music language, because that's what he listens to. So he calls her these just awful words. And she used to tell him, you can't talk to me like that. Well, as soon as you tell somebody what they can't do, they usually will fight you. So that's not very productive. And I suggested to her that it probably wasn't. So what she could do is say, you can use that kind of language all you want to. You're welcome to. Scream and curse and yell. But I have chosen in my life to fill my mind with happy, uplifting thoughts. Those words aren't happy and uplifting to me. So I choose not to be around them. So you may scream and use those words all you wish, but you can't do it in the same room with me. So you have a choice. When you scream and use those words, either you can leave and do it in another room, or I will leave and do it in another room. And he doesn't like it when she's away from him. So she says, so if I leave, I'll be gone for an hour or more. I'll leave in the car and come back. And then he'll say, oh, no, don't go. Well, that's up to you, but I can't be around that kind of language. I don't like it. She said, well, isn't that kind of controlling? No, it's just like you would do. And the same thing with this kid with smoking. It's just like you, with this kid with jumping up and down. It's just like you would do with smoking. I don't try to control anybody's smoking. I don't care if people smoke. Smoke all you want. Smoke yourself to death. But you don't get to smoke in the room where I am, because your smoking affects my health. Jumping up and down affects my ability to eat. Screaming in my ear affects my ability to watch something else. Cursing and using bad language affects my ability to maintain a peaceful, happy train of thought. So you can do all that you want to, but I choose to leave. I leave or you leave, you pick. And if you say, well, I ain't leaving, no problem, then I will. So however you want to handle it. Like, for example, let's say that a child was jumping up and down in the car or screaming or what, pull the car over. And you say, so do you want to leave or me? I'm not leaving. Great. Shut the car down, walk over, prepare for such things. Bring a sandwich in the car and say, we'll leave you in the car and we'll go have a picnic over there under the tree while you scream and yell in the car by yourself. People catch on pretty quickly that having their little tantrums and being obnoxious and jumping up and down and cursing and is kind of boring when they do it by themselves. The whole reason they're doing it usually, or continue to do it, is to have an effect on you. And if it doesn't, you say, oh, I don't care, but I'm leaving. They'll quit doing it. They'd rather be with you, especially if you're loving. So the more loving you are, the less people want to do that and miss being with you. Let's see, I've heard it said that the current generation of kids are self-centered, more self-centered than earlier generations. It's suggested this is a result of permissive and indulgent parenting. Do I disagree with this? No, I don't disagree. I think it is true. I think more and more parents have decided that rather than loving and teaching, and this isn't a result of a fault really on the part of parents. Parents haven't decided, let's see, I'll be more indulgent. No, I think it's really because of the greater availability of forms of imitation love. I mean, in the old days, in the Depression, what forms of imitation love were available to bribe your children with? None. So kids had work and responsibility, and they had to go out and earn $1. Now, kids can be distracted and bribed with everything, and they feel so entitled to those things that parents don't dare say no. Children feel absolutely entitled to their video games, entertainment, pleasure, leisure, it just goes on and on. So, no, I agree. Parents have increasingly become permissive and indulgent. Martha says, I feel great about using real love with my niece. I decided not to push myself on her, especially after my sister died / committed suicide this year. I've listened a lot and stayed quiet and just looked for ways to be loving. I received the most beautiful email this weekend from her. She told me she loved me, and I know it's real, not because I've done anything special. I've allowed her to see me cry, be tired, be able to say no, etc. I feel so full with giving and receiving the real stuff. She was usually very quiet and reserved and held back because we didn't really know one another well, except through what my sister had told us about one another. It's been great to slow down and let each other just be ourselves, and now she's opening up and talking freely. I couldn't be any happier if I'd won the lottery. See how cool this is to just unconditionally love somebody? And somebody was asking, well, can you do this at work? Uh-huh. just like this. You just love people and they respond like this. We're all this desperate for it. I feel so loved, and she does too. Now, isn't that great to have real love from a family member? Yeah. I get such great advice in my real love group on Sundays. I just can't tell you too many times. Join a real love group. If you're not in a real love group, read the book Real Love for Wise Men and Women, and it will tell you how to form a real love group. Be in a group. Now, what we're doing right now is a group. You ask questions. You hear not just answers, but feel accepted while you're telling the truth about yourself. That's what groups do. But the more you can participate in a real live group in person, the more powerful that will be for you. So I recommend it highly. But anyway, she says, thanks for coming to Austin several times and so on. And by the way, Martha, if you see an opportunity for scheduling another seminar in Austin, let us know and we'll come and we'll do another one. The more opportunities that we have to feel real love in person, the more powerful it is. Feeling it by email is good. Feeling it on the phone is great. The next step is this way, video conferencing. You can feel it even better there. But looking at somebody's eyes, feeling their presence, seeing their accepting posture, that whole business, there's just something about getting the whole package. So anything you can do to participate in the complete live real love experience in a group, make it happen. The people who have changed the most have been members of a real love group. So thanks a whole lot for coming. We'll see you again next Tuesday. Bring your friends, bring your questions, and we'll see you a week from today. Love y'all.